Okay, we are going to start section 4.2 today. This is in the chapter where we're talking about how statisticians design studies. And specifically in this section, we're going to be looking at what's called experimental design. Now, one of the key components to this is it's very important, and I see this on a lot of AP Stats questions, is that students understand the differences between an observational study and an experiment. Because oftentimes, depending on which of these two things we're talking about, you can conclude something different. Okay, so let's just talk about an observational study here, first of all. An observational study, it says here, observes individuals and it measures variables of interest, but it does not attempt to influence the responses. Okay, so this basically means that your researcher, it would be considered to be hands-off. Okay, he's not going to be imposing any treatments where he's going to be splitting the groups randomly into two different groups and then assigning one group one treatment, maybe another group gets another treatment, maybe the third group doesn't get any treatment, sort of as a control group. That's not what an observational study is. Okay, an observational study might be just someone pulling health records of several people and sort of analyzing the data. Okay, they're very hands-off in terms of imposing any treatment to the individuals in any specific way. Now, if it's an observational study, though, your conclusion is only an association. It's not a cause and effect conclusion. So, if you're not imposing treatments, you cannot, at the end of your study, make a statement that this variable causes this other variable to occur. Okay? That actually is what is done in an experiment. It says here, an experiment deliberately imposes some type of a treatment on individuals, and here's the key component here, who were randomly assigned to treatment groups. Okay? And it measures their responses. Okay? It is with experiments that in the end you could draw a conclusion based on cause and effect. Okay? In an experiment, we would definitely say that the researcher is hands-on, okay, because they are going to be taking the group of people that are going to participate in the experiment, they're going to separate them into different treatment groups, and then this is very important. The key here is that they are randomly assigning the treatments to the groups, okay? The researcher does not decide that himself. He would use some random process to assign which treatment each group gets, okay? So the type of conclusion that you can draw at the end of a study, whether it's an observational study or whether it's an experiment, is what we refer to as a scope of inference, okay? This is referring to what conclusion can you draw from your study. Okay, and basically the types of inferences that you can make are either one of two things. It's either about the population or it's about cause and effect. Okay, and there are really two elements, two factors in the design of your study that allow you to decide which of those conclusions you can draw. And so this chart kind of does a nice job here of organizing this information. I want to walk you through this chart, and then when we finish this chart, this is going to bring this video to a close because we had in class done the see no evil, hear no evil experiment activity together. Okay, and so you'll notice at the top of this, and I'm just going to highlight the top of this here where it says, were the individuals randomly assigned to groups? Okay, or in other words, you could ask yourself, what did you do with the individuals once you have them? Okay, what were you doing with them? If you are answering yes to that question, okay, if you're saying yes, I randomly assigned them to groups, or that the treatments were randomly assigned to the groups, if you say yes to that, that means that you can conclude that in the end, whatever the variables are that you're looking at, you could conclude that one variable is causing the other variable to happen. And you'll notice in this column, and I'm just going to kind of box in around the perimeter of this yes column here, that what these have in common for answering this question is you are allowed to conclude cause and effect. Notice that if you're not randomly assigning the treatments or randomly assigning people to the treatment groups, then you cannot conclude causation. Okay, only association, but not causation. Okay, so you always want to look for that. Were the people randomly assigned to treatment groups? That's when you can use cause and effect. The other question that you want to ask yourself is, how did you get the individuals? Were they randomly selected from a population? Okay, how were the individuals selected? Okay, if you're going to say, yes, I randomly selected them from a population, that's going to land you in this row right here. Okay, so if you're answering yes, that you randomly selected them, that means that you can generalize your results to the overall population. Okay, and you'll notice that's what this row has in common. Okay, a lot of times it's pretty unusual to randomly choose the individuals and to also do an experiment where you're randomly assigning treatments. There are not very many studies that fall into this category. Usually, if you randomly selected the individuals, then it typically is an observational study, because usually the people who participate in an experiment where treatments are randomly assigned, usually those people are volunteers. Okay, so if you're landing down here at no, I did not gather the individuals randomly from a population, then you're not allowed to, in the end, whatever your conclusion is, you're not allowed to generalize your results to the overarching population. You can only generalize your results to people who were in that specific sample. Okay, you can only generalize those results to people who were in the sample. Okay, so generally the experiments fall into when you're randomly assigning people treatments, but maybe the people were volunteers. And observational studies are when you gathered people individually, okay, or randomly rather, okay, but then you were not randomly assigning treatments. Okay, if you did not gather people randomly and you are not randomly assigning treatments, this is not a great box to be in here at all. You can't really conclude causation. You can't really generalize your results to the population. There are some observational studies who do fall in this category. Even the example I gave earlier where you might just pull medical files from people and analyze that data, it can at least tell you some information about that group of people. But we want to just keep in mind that when your goal is, if the goal is to conclude cause and effect, it has to be an experiment. And that means you have to be randomly assigning treatments. Okay, people should not get to choose which treatment group they're participating in. Okay, that's where we're going to stop on this particular video. A few problems here that you should be able to try.